The 2 months Max had spent aboard the ISC, Horizon had been transformative, though not without its challenges. His body, once frail from prolonged cryosleep and the ship's low gravity, was now steadily regaining its former strength. Max sat on a medical table in Malinar's lab as she conducted a routine checkup. The soft hum of medical instruments filled the room as Malinar observed the data on her console. "You're adapting remarkably well," Malinar said, her tone professional but with a touch of warmth. "Your muscle mass is steadily increasing, and the training with the Altheadans seems to be accelerating your recovery. Though I imagine keeping up with them hasn't been easy." Max chuckled as he pulled his shirt back on. "Difficult, absolutely. Enjoyable? Surprisingly, yes. At first I thought I'd collapse under the gravity settings in their gym, but I'm starting to hold my own. I've even managed to surprise a few of them." Malinar allowed herself a small smile, but quickly masked it. As Max moved to adjust his shirt, her empathic senses caught an unexpected pulse of admiration. She tried to ignore it, but her gaze briefly lingered on the way his muscles were beginning to tone. It wasn't like her to notice such things. Her people valued emotional exchanges far more than physical appearance. But the sight startled her all the same. "Malinar?" Max's voice broke her train of thought. She blinked and returned her focus to the medical console. "Sorry, I was distracted." "Did you say something?" "I was just asking if you're free to join me on a walk around the ship. If you're busy, though, I understand." Malinar hesitated. Spending time with Max was enjoyable. His curiosity and resilience were refreshing, but the unexpected jolt of admiration unsettled her. She opened her mouth to excuse herself when a loud klaxon blared through the ship, followed by Ava's calm but urgent voice. "Attention all crew. An unidentified vessel has entered sensor range. All personnel, report to your designated stations." "Repeat, an unidentified vessel has entered sensor range." Max immediately straightened, his brow furrowing. "Ava, what's going on?" The AI's hologram materialized nearby, her expression calm but serious. "The vessel has been identified as Kirnaf class. The Kirnaf are a Death World species known for piracy. Their ships often target exploration vessels like ours due to our lack of offensive weaponry. They are hailing us now." Malinar's fur bristled, and Max noticed her trembling slightly. "What do they want?" he asked Ava, though he could already guess the answer. Ava's tone turned grim. "The Kirnaf captain demands our surrender. Their usual tactics involve boarding and seizing ships, often enslaving crew members. They are particularly drawn to species with empathic abilities like Malinar's." Malinar's panic became palpable. She clutched her arms tightly, her breathing uneven. Max stepped closer, lowering his voice to a calm, steady tone. "Malinar, it's going to be fine. I won't let anything happen to you or anyone else." He turned to Ava. "Connect me to the bridge." Moments later, Captain Cabo's voice filled the room. "Max, what do you need?" "Permission to assist with the ship's defense," Max said firmly. "Organize a defense around key choke points. We can't let them board without resistance." Before Cabo could respond, Maruk's voice cut in. "Absolutely not. Max is not part of ship security. He's not trained for this." Max's jaw tightened. "The enemy of my enemy is my friend, remember? I said I'd defend this ship and its crew, and I meant it. Malinar is panicking. That's reason enough for me to act." Cabo hummed thoughtfully, the weight of his decision evident. Finally, he spoke. "Ava, release Max's mag pistol and ammunition. Max, report to the armory immediately. You'll join the second defense line." Maruk growled in protest, but Cabo silenced him. "Max has earned the right to fight for this ship." Max wasted no time. He sprinted down the corridors, his mind racing. As he ran, he called out to Ava. "What else do I need to know about the Kirnaf?" "They are a Class 9 Death World species," Ava replied. "Hulking reptilians, roughly equal in size to the Altheadans. Their culture revolves around a cult of death. They believe dying in battle is the ultimate honor. They are ruthless and physically formidable." Max groaned. "Wonderful. Just what we needed." He rounded a corner and entered the armory, where security personnel were gearing up. Most were Altheadans, their imposing figures clad in heavy armor and equipped with energy weapons. A few other species joined them, each armed and ready. The officer in charge noticed Max approach and handed him a mag pistol along with several cartridges of ammunition. "Do you want an energy rifle instead?" Max shook his head, clipping the pistol's holster to his belt. "I don't know how to use one." "This'll have to do. I'll take some extra ammo, though." The officer nodded and handed him 2 additional magazines. As Max secured them, he noticed Maruk glaring at him from across the room. Ignoring the hostility, Max adjusted his holster and turned to Ava's hologram. "Where do you need me?" he asked. Ava displayed a schematic of the ship. "Choke Point C is the most vulnerable. A small team is already en route, but they'll need reinforcements. I suggest you head there." Max nodded, his resolve solidifying. "Let's do this." With that, he joined the flow of armed personnel heading toward their assigned positions. Despite the tension in the air, Max felt an unexpected sense of clarity. For the first time in months, he wasn't just surviving. He was fighting for something bigger than himself. As the klaxon continued to wail, Max prepared himself for the battle ahead, knowing that the stakes were higher than ever. The corridor leading to Choke Point C was tense with anticipation as Max took his position alongside a team of Utheadan security officers and other crew members. The air thrummed with the sound of energy weapons powering up, and Max tightened his grip on the mag pistol. The first wave of Kernaf came crashing into the choke point like a tidal wave of scales and teeth. Hulking reptilian figures, their thick scales gleaming under the corridor lights, charged with savage determination. Energy bolts from the defenders lit up the narrow space, some deflecting harmlessly off the Kernaf's natural armor, while others found their marks in vulnerable gaps. Max kept low, aiming carefully. The mag pistol's sharp thrum and recoil resonated with every shot he fired, the tungsten rounds punching through the Kernaf's scales with brutal efficiency. While others fired in rapid bursts, Max's shots were deliberate and precise, targeting weak points in joints and unprotected areas. "Focus fire on the flanks," he shouted, instinctively taking command as the Kernaf pressed forward. "They're leaving their sides exposed during the charge." The defenders adjusted their aim, forcing the Kernaf to slow as their numbers thinned. Max's mind worked quickly, analyzing the enemy's movements. He could see the way their formation shifted, the gaps they unintentionally left as they pushed forward. It was enough to give the defenders an edge, and after a tense 10 minutes, the assault at Choke Point C began to falter. Max exhaled sharply, his pistol still warm in his hand. His relief was short-lived, however, as Ava's voice crackled in his ear. "Max, Choke Point A is in danger of being overrun. Reinforcements are en route, but they may not arrive in time." Max clenched his jaw, holstering the mag pistol. "Guide me to the rear of the enemy force. I'll flank them." "Max, that area is heavily contested," Ava warned. "I know," Max said, already drawing his survival knife from its sheath. "Just get me there." He moved swiftly, his muscles burning in protest from the strain of the battle and his earlier workout. Ava's hologram appeared occasionally to guide him through the labyrinthine corridors, and soon he reached the rear of the enemy force pressing against Maruk's position. Max took a deep breath, steadying his nerves as he surveyed the Kernaf. They were massive, brutish figures, but they moved with surprising coordination. He tightened his grip on the knife and pistol, his mind racing. "Here goes nothing," he muttered, stepping into the fray. The first Kernaf never saw him coming. A tungsten round from Max's pistol shattered its knee, and before it could react, Max drove the blade of his knife into its throat. Blood sprayed as the creature fell, and Max moved on to the next. The confined space worked in his favor. The Kernaf struggled to turn and face him in the narrow corridor, their bulk hindering their movements. Max ducked under a heavy swing, firing a shot into a vulnerable spot under the attacker's arm before driving his knife into its chest. Despite the chaos, Max's mind remained sharp. He analyzed each enemy, predicting their movements and exploiting their weaknesses. The Kernaf were strong, but they lacked agility and finesse. Max's smaller frame and quick reflexes allowed him to weave through their ranks, leaving a trail of incapacitated foes in his wake. From the corner of his eye, Max spotted Maruk, who was locked in a fierce melee with 3 Kernaf warriors. The security officer's strength was formidable, but even he was being pushed to his limits. Max surged forward, his pistol firing its last tungsten round into one of the warriors. As the remaining 2 turned toward him, Max lunged, his knife slicing into one while his foot connected with the other's knee. The brief distraction was enough for Maruk to regain the upper hand. He dispatched the last Kernaf with a powerful strike, then turned to see Max standing amidst the aftermath, bloodied but unyielding. Before Maruk could speak, Max was already moving. His body screamed for rest, but his mind refused to let him stop. Ava's voice came through again, this time more urgently. "The final choke point is still under attack. They've breached the outer defenses." Max gritted his teeth, holstering his empty pistol and grabbing a discarded Kernaf battle axe. The weapon was heavy, its blade jagged and menacing, but it would have to do. "Guide me there," he said, his voice resolute. By the time Max reached the last choke point, the battle was in full swing. The defenders were struggling to hold their ground, and the Kernaf were pressing their advantage. Without hesitation, Max charged into the thick of the melee. The axe felt unwieldy in his hands, but Max adapted quickly, using its weight to his advantage. He swung it in wide arcs, cleaving through the enemy ranks with brutal efficiency. His movements were a blur of calculated strikes and evasive maneuvers, his training and intelligence guiding him through the chaos. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the Kirnath began to retreat. The defenders rallied, pushing the remaining boarders back to their ship. Max stood in the aftermath, his body trembling from exhaustion. He took a step forward, then another, before his legs gave out beneath him. When the all-clear signal finally sounded, Malinar was the first to find him. She knelt beside him, her empathic senses overwhelmed by the mix of pain, determination, and exhaustion radiating from him. "Max," she said softly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You did it. It's over." He managed a weak smile before his eyes closed, his body succumbing to the exhaustion he had been fighting for so long. In the hours that followed, the crew worked to assess the damage and tend to the wounded. Captain Cabo reviewed Ava's report on the battle, his expression a mix of disbelief and pride. Max's actions had been reckless, but they had also been instrumental in turning the tide. As Cabo leaned back in his chair, he couldn't help but feel a growing respect for the bold, brilliant human who had kept his word to defend the ship and its crew. Max wandered the ISC, Horizon as he often did now, his steps lighter than they had been in his first days aboard the ship. The crew's glances, once wary and filled with suspicion, had softened. Word of his actions during the Kirnath boarding had spread throughout the ship. His heroism, resourcefulness, and quick thinking had earned him a grudging respect from even the most skeptical. He had taken to lending a hand wherever he could during his walks. His natural curiosity often drew him to the engineering decks, where the drones clattered and whirred as they carried out their programmed duties. Today, however, he found himself facing Ziphian Tech, the ship's Cordian engineer, as she stood next to a malfunctioning drone, her lower set of arms crossed and her upper set working to examine a damaged control module. "This one's completely offline," Ziphian muttered to herself. "Missing parts. It's useless until we make port." Max, leaning casually against the bulkhead, raised an eyebrow. "Need help?" Ziphian glanced up at him, her orange-tinted eyes narrowing in amusement. "What are you going to do? Beat it into working order like you humans supposedly do?" Max smirked. "If I did, I'd use the correct amount of force in the right place. Percussive maintenance is a fine art, you know." Ziphian snorted, a sound Max had come to recognize as her species' equivalent of laughter. "Go ahead, human. Show me what you've got. Not that it'll help without the replacement parts." Max studied the drone for a moment, then looked around at the deactivated units scattered in the storage bay. "Why not salvage parts from the others? Kit bash something together." Ziphian frowned. "That's inefficient, and it risks introducing compatibility issues or system instability." "Or," Max countered, "it gets you a functioning drone now instead of months from now." "Ava," he called, "can you scan all the damaged drones and provide holographic overlays of their working and non-working parts?" Ava's holographic form flickered into view, her tone bright with approval. "Already on it, Max." Ziphian's frown deepened, but she didn't protest further as Ava projected the requested data. Within minutes, Max and Ziphian began sorting through the drones, Max identifying salvageable components, while Ziphian meticulously checked compatibility. At first, Ziphian's methodical approach clashed with Max's more intuitive resourcefulness. She insisted on triple-checking every connection, while Max was content to test the functionality on the fly. "You're too reckless," she said, her tone half exasperated, half impressed, as Max adjusted a power conduit without running a diagnostic first. "And you're too cautious," Max replied with a grin. "But hey, we're making progress." 4 hours later, 7 drones had been restored to near-perfect functionality. As Ava eagerly reported the results to the bridge, Ziphian leaned back, her 4 arms resting against the console. "You're insufferable," she muttered, though there was a note of grudging admiration in her voice. Max laughed. "You're welcome." On the bridge, Captain Cabo listened to Ava's report with a contemplative hum. "Max's ingenuity continues to surprise us," he said. "Perhaps it's time to give him a more defined role aboard the Horizon." "I agree," Malinar said, her voice steady. "He's proven himself capable time and time again, and if he's kept busy, it will help him integrate further into the crew." "I'd suggest assigning him to the engineering bay," Cabo said. Ava's hologram appeared, her tone as neutral as ever. "That would underutilize his abilities, Captain." She shared a translated version of Max's personnel records, highlighting his extensive academic qualifications and training. The bridge fell silent as the officers processed the information. "This can't be right," Tashar said finally, his ears flattening in disbelief. "A first-tier adept in 4 fields and a second-tier adept in 5 others? And he's 18? Malinar blinked, her mind flashing back to the day Max had casually mentioned being bored as a child because things were too easy. "It's accurate," she said. "And it explains how he bridged the lexicon so quickly. What do you suggest?" Cabo asked. Malinar hesitated, then made a bold proposal. We could make him a provisional science officer. He wouldn't be an official crew member, but it would allow us to utilize his skills more effectively. He could provide human solutions when conventional methods fail. Tashar groaned, rubbing his temples. He's already solved a formula that had stumped me for weeks. I don't like the idea of giving him more opportunities to make me look bad. Maruk, who had remained silent until now, spoke up. His actions during the Kirnaf attack proved he's more than capable in combat. If he takes the role, he could also lead a defense team in emergencies. And, Ava added, I recommend giving him an actual cabin. The isolation habitat is not conducive to building trust. Cabo nodded slowly. Very well. Ava, begin fabricating a science officer tunic for him. Malinar, inform Max of the offer and let him know the cabin will be his regardless of his decision. When Malinar found Max, he was in the storage bay, reorganizing tools that had been left out of place. Max, she said, catching his attention, the captain has an offer for you. As she explained the provisional science officer role and the accompanying cabin, Max listened intently. When she finished, he was silent for a moment, his expression thoughtful. I have one request, he said finally. Malinar tilted her head. What is it? If I take the role, I want to be allowed on planetary exploration missions. Malinar considered this, then nodded. I'll make sure it's included. Max smiled faintly. All right then. I guess I'd better earn that tunic. Max leaned back against the soft fabric of his chair, his gaze fixed on the viewport as the vastness of space stretched endlessly before him. The stars shimmered like distant lanterns, too far to touch yet too close to ignore. His cabin was modest, yet it felt oddly homely. The survival tablets from the Aurora colonists lined the shelves, their holographic displays flickering with images of Earth. Each tablet showed a piece of the planet he longed for. Lush green forests, azure oceans, towering cityscapes, and even mundane suburban neighborhoods. These were fragments of a world he wasn't sure he would ever see again. On his desk lay a piece of the Aurora's hull, polished and smoothed from countless years drifting in space. It was a silent tribute to those who didn't survive. The officer tunic he'd been given hung neatly by the door, paired with the modified colony jumpsuits he and Ava had painstakingly adjusted to fit beneath it. It felt surreal to wear the insignia of the ISC, Horizon, a ship and crew that now felt like a strange makeshift family. Malinar had been the first to notice how seamlessly Max had started integrating into the crew. It was in the small things, the way he offered unorthodox solutions without hesitation, how he seemed to notice things others overlooked, and how he effortlessly worked alongside both organic and synthetic minds. In medical, his suggestions had helped to refine the diagnostic algorithms, catching subtleties that even Ava had missed. He has eyes like a predator, Malinar murmured to herself once, watching Max review a set of scans with unnerving precision. She'd asked him how he managed it, and his reply had been as disarming as it was simple. On Earth, missing small details can get you killed. It's second nature to notice. His words stayed with her. Cabo had also begun to rely on Max in ways he hadn't anticipated. When the Horizon encountered wreckage from a long-lost Kirna freighter, it was Max who identified potential dangers among the debris. With a single suggestion to recalibrate the ship's scanners to detect chemical residues, they uncovered a volatile storage tank that could have detonated upon contact. Sharp eyes, Max, Cabo had rumbled with approval, his ursine features softening. You keep this up and you'll be saving us more often than Ava. Max had chuckled lightly, his humility evident. It's just instinct, Captain. Back home we learned quickly to err on the side of caution. Cabo noted the way Max avoided mentioning Earth explicitly. It was a puzzle the captain intended to solve, but for now he let it rest. Trust, he knew, was earned in layers. Even Tashar had reluctantly warmed to the human's presence. While Max's earlier insight into his work had irked him, the chief science officer couldn't deny the value of having another sharp mind aboard. Their discussions often started with Tashar's skepticism and ended with Max proposing solutions that bordered on brilliance. Fine, Tashar had said one afternoon, his vulpine tail flicking in mild irritation. Your idea works. But next time, perhaps consider consulting me before upending months of calculations. I did consult you, Max replied with a grin, his tone teasing. I just didn't wait for your approval. Tashar huffed, but there was a hint of a smile hidden beneath his frustration. Max's relationship with Maruk had also shifted. The head of security still maintained a wary edge, but their tactical discussions had grown into something resembling camaraderie. Maruk enjoyed challenging Max with increasingly complex combat scenarios, and to his surprise, Max consistently provided solutions that left even Ava impressed. Where did you learn this? Maruk asked after one particularly intricate simulation. Max shrugged. It's not just about training. It's about understanding your enemy, your environment, and your resources. Humans call it survival instinct. Maruk nodded, his respect for the young human growing. Keep working on that. You're proving yourself useful. Max smiled faintly. Working on something already? It's complicated. Engineering was where Max found both frustration and amusement. Zephian Tech's meticulous nature clashed with his improvisational approach, but their unlikely partnership had become one of mutual respect. Max! Zephian groaned as he bypassed a drone's faulty circuit board with a salvaged component. You're going to give me an aneurysm with these shortcuts. They're not shortcuts, Max replied, smirking. They're creative solutions. Zephian's forearms crossed skeptically. Your solutions defy all logic. Exactly, Max said, tapping the drone, which hummed to life. And yet they work. The Cordian engineer couldn't help but laugh. My kin would be horrified. But you're not half bad, human. Max chuckled and hums, Hey, Zephian, can you help me brainstorm something? I don't know if I can pull something off alone, he says, pulling out his survival tablet. But despite his growing role and acceptance among the crew, Max often found himself drawn to the observation rooms, staring out into the infinite expanse of stars. Tonight was no different. He barely noticed Malinar's presence until she spoke softly. You've been quiet lately. Max glanced at her, offering a faint smile. Just thinking. She stepped closer, her empathic senses brushing against the surface of his emotions. There was a storm beneath the calm, a mix of hope, regret, and something she couldn't quite place. What's on your mind? She asked gently. Max hesitated, then sighed. I used to look down on people. Back home, I thought I was better than most because things came easy to me. But now I don't even know if my home still exists, or if humanity is still out there. Malinar's heart ached at the vulnerability in his voice. Max, you've survived against impossible odds. That says more about your people than words ever could. He nodded slowly, his gaze returning to the stars. I just hope I'm not the last. That somewhere out there someone's looking up at these same stars and thinking the same thing. You're not alone anymore, Malinar said firmly. We're here, Max. And we won't stop until we find the answers you need. For the first time in days, Max's smile reached his eyes. Thanks, Malinar. That means more than you know. And as they stood together, gazing into the void, Max allowed himself a flicker of hope. Somewhere out there, humanity's story wasn't over yet. The next day, in the briefing room aboard the ISC, Horizon was tense but focused, the hum of the ship's systems barely audible over the soft murmurs of the senior staff. Captain Cabo Zoam sat at the head of the table, his ursine features calm but his deep-set eyes sharp with curiosity. Beside him, Maruk Kian's posture was rigid, his arms crossed in quiet defiance. Malinar sat further down, her expression carefully neutral, though her empathic senses buzzed with the emotions in the room. Max Williams stood near the holographic display table, a schematic glowing in the air before him. His fingers hovered over the interface as he explained his proposal to the assembled crew. This is my idea, Max began, gesturing to the projected blueprint. A drone system specifically designed for defensive operations during boarding actions. The drones would carry the heavy shields currently used by the Authiadans, freeing them to wield heavier weapons and focus on counteroffensives. The room was silent for a moment, save for the soft whirring of Ava's holographic projector, as the AI appeared next to Max. Her translucent figure studied the blueprint before turning her attention to the crew. It's a logical solution, Ava said, her tone neutral but firm. Statistical simulations indicate a significant improvement in both defensive and offensive efficiency if this system is implemented. Cabo stroked his chin thoughtfully, his claws grazing his fur. And yet, the shield is more than just a piece of equipment to my people, he said. His voice was calm but carried an undercurrent of conflict. It is a symbol of honor, a vow to protect those behind us. To hand that responsibility to a machine feels wrong. Maruk nodded in agreement, his expression hard. The shield is sacred to the Uthiedan. It represents our strength and our duty. I cannot surrender that even for efficiency. Max took a deep breath, his hands clasping behind his back as he faced the two Uthiadans. I understand, he said sincerely. The shield is more than a tool, it's a part of your identity. But hear me out. He tapped the interface and the schematic shifted to a simulation of a boarding action. The holographic display showed Uthiedan warriors in the front line, their movement slowed by the heavy shields. Behind them, other species struggled to find effective firing positions. In the last boarding action with the Kirnaf, Max explained, I noticed that your front line is crucial for protecting the crew, but the shields limit your mobility. and prevent you from using your full strength to countercharge. If the shields are carried by drones instead, you'd be free to fight at full capacity while the drones maintain the defensive line for the rest of us. Tasharwolp leaned forward, his vulpine features skeptical but intrigued. It's an interesting idea, he admitted, but we don't have the raw materials to fabricate the necessary parts. The resources required for drone construction are not something we have in abundance. Zildjian Tech, the ship's chief engineer and Ziphian's father, nodded in agreement. The boy is clever, but cleverness won't conjure materials out of thin air. Max gave a small, knowing smile. I've already considered that. We don't have the materials, at least not in the form you're thinking of. But we do have my cryopod. The room went still. You want to dismantle your cryopod? Malinar asked softly, her empathic senses picking up the faint turmoil in Max's emotions. Max nodded. It's made of advanced alloys, some of which are rare even by your standards. Ziphian and I have been working on a plan to break it down and smelt the components into usable materials. It's not easy, but it's possible. Zildjian tilted his head, considering. You'd sacrifice the pod? Your only physical link to your past. Max's gaze didn't waver. The pod did its job. It saved my life. Now it can help save others. Maruk frowned, his arms tightening across his chest. I still can't agree with this. The shield is a symbol of protection. To give that duty to a machine is to dishonor our ancestors. Max met Maruk's eyes, his voice steady but laced with quiet intensity. I've studied your culture, Maruk. The shield isn't just about protection. It's about ensuring the safety of those who can't defend themselves. The drones won't replace the Altheadan warriors. They'll enhance them. The shields will still defend the crew, but you'll be free to strike with full force and end any threat faster. Isn't that the ultimate goal of your honor code? Maruk opened his mouth to counter but hesitated. Cabo's deep voice broke the silence. He has a point, the captain said, his tone thoughtful. Our honor is tied to the protection of the ship and its crew. If this system allows us to do that more effectively, then perhaps it's worth considering. Maruk's jaw tightened, but he gave a reluctant nod. I'll think about it. Malinar watched Max closely, sensing the subtle mix of resolve and uncertainty in his emotions. You're sure about this? She asked. Max turned to her, his expression softening. I'm sure this is my way of contributing. I owe this crew my life, and I'll do whatever it takes to keep everyone safe. Cabo leaned back in his chair, his gaze sweeping over the room. We'll take this under serious consideration. Zildjian, work with Max and Ziphian to see if the materials from the cryopod can be repurposed. Ava, run additional simulations on the effectiveness of the proposed system. And Maruk, he paused, his expression softening. Think about what Max said. Honor isn't diminished by adapting, it's strengthened. The meeting ended and the crew began to disperse. As Max turned to leave, Malinar approached him, her voice low. You're carrying a lot on your shoulders, she said. Max gave her a small smile. I guess I am, but it's worth it. Her empathic senses caught the flicker of something deeper, an attachment he was struggling to articulate. She placed a gentle hand on his arm. You don't have to carry it alone. Max hesitated, then nodded. Thanks, Malinar, that means a lot. As she watched him leave, Malinar couldn't help but feel a growing admiration for the young human who had already given so much and was willing to give even more. The engineering bay echoed with the steady clink of tools and the hum of machinery as Max Williams and Ziphian Tech worked with near-surgical precision. Pieces of the cryopod, once Max's impenetrable coffin in the cold void, lay dismantled on a large workbench. Each component was carefully catalogued under the watchful gaze of Zildjian Tech, the chief engineer. That alloy is extraordinary, Zildjian muttered, holding up a fragment of the cryopod's outer shell. The piece gleamed with an iridescent sheen under the bay's harsh lights. Strong, lightweight, resistant to energy weapons. Your people were clearly advanced. Max didn't look up from his task of removing a particularly stubborn coupling. We were resourceful, he replied. Humans didn't have the luxury of otherworldly resources or ancient technologies. We had to innovate with what we had. Ziphian, perched on a stool with her 4 arms deftly working on a micro-welder, glanced up at her father. He's not wrong. This design is efficient, elegant even. I've been taking notes. Zildjian grunted, torn between skepticism and reluctant admiration. We'll see if it lives up to its potential once we start smelting it down. Max wiped his forehead with the back of his hand, the physical effort grounding him as his mind raced with memories. Each piece of the cryopod he removed felt like a piece of his past being stripped away. It was necessary, but it wasn't easy. Later that evening, Max found himself in the observation room, staring out at the stars. The great void stretched endlessly before him, the pinpricks of light a reminder of how vast and indifferent the universe could be. His arms rested on the railing, his head bowed as waves of memories swept over him. He thought of his parents, Evelyn and Adrian. His mother's gentle voice as she explained the intricacies of biochemistry to him when he was just a child. His father's booming laugh and the way he'd patiently answer Max's endless questions about physics. And then there was Marie. Marie with her fiery passion and razor-sharp wit. Marie who had somehow seen past his arrogance and broken through his defenses. She had been a force of nature, challenging him, grounding him, and teaching him how to truly connect with others. Max's chest tightened as he remembered her laugh, her determined gaze, the way she'd argue with him until they both ended up laughing. He'd never told her how he felt, and now he never would. He barely noticed the sound of the observation room door sliding open, but he felt the presence before he saw her. Max, Malinar's voice was soft, a gentle hum of concern. He didn't turn around. How did you know I was here? She stepped closer, her empathic senses reaching out to the grief and longing radiating from him. I felt it, she said simply. He let out a short laugh, humorless and hollow. Of course you did. You're always so good at that. She stood beside him, her hands resting lightly on the railing. For a while neither of them spoke, the silence filled only by the hum of the ship and the distant light of the stars. Do you want to talk about it? Malinar asked gently. Max hesitated, his grip tightening on the railing. But there was something in her presence, steady, warm, unjudging, that made it easier to let the words come. He started with his parents. Mom and Dad were incredible people, he said softly. Mom was religious. She believed in animism, that everything has a spirit. Dad wasn't religious at all, but they both loved science. They taught me that the universe is vast and beautiful, even if it's cruel. Malinar nodded, remembering the brief conversations they'd had about his mother's beliefs. Animism, she said. I remember you mentioning it. Your mother's faith must have been important to her. It was, Max said, a faint smile flickering across his lips. She used to tell me that every star, every planet, even the void itself has a soul. It sounded poetic when I was a kid. Now, I'm not sure what to believe. Malinar's gaze softened, her empathic senses brushing against the grief buried deep in his words. And Marie? She asked after a moment. Max stilled, his knuckles whitening on the railing. Marie, he exhaled slowly, his voice thick with emotion. She was everything I wasn't. Passionate, stubborn, brilliant in a way that was infuriating and amazing all at once. We clashed so much when we first met, but she never gave up on me. She broke down every wall I put up and made me see people, not just problems to solve. Malinar hesitated, then asked the question gently. Did you love her? Max was silent for a long time, his eyes fixed on the stars. Finally, he shook his head. I don't know, he admitted. I never told her. I never even let myself think about it. I was too focused on proving myself, on being the smartest person in the room. She deserved better than that. He sighed, his shoulders slumping. She taught me how to connect with people, how to trust them. She told me that in a colony, trust and communication are the most important things. And now, he swallowed hard. Now she's gone. Everyone I ever cared about is gone. Malinar reached out, placing a hand on his arm. Her voice was soft but firm. You carry a lot of weight, Max, but you're not alone anymore. Max looked at her, his expression a mix of gratitude and sadness. You remind me of her, he said quietly. Not physically, but emotionally, like you have the same soul in a different body. He gave a short laugh, shaking his head. That sounds like something Mom would say. Malinar hummed thoughtfully. In my beliefs, the veil connects all souls. It's possible in a way, but I'm not Marie, Max. I'm me. I know, he said, his voice steady but soft. And I'm glad you're you. For a moment, the weight of his grief felt a little lighter. The stars outside still stretched endlessly, but with Malinar beside him, the void didn't feel quite so empty. The following morning, Max woke feeling lighter, the weight of yesterday's memories no longer pressing as heavily on his chest. The talk with Malinar had given him a clarity he hadn't felt in weeks, a reminder that even in this unfamiliar galaxy, he wasn't completely alone. As he stepped into the engineering bay, the familiar hum of machinery and the faint metallic tang of heated alloy greeted him. Zephian Tech was already there, her 4 arms moving with mechanical precision as she prepared the smelting equipment. Finally decided to show up? She teased without looking up from her work. Max smirked. It's not my fault you don't need sleep. Zephian chuckled. 4 arms, less sleep, Cordian efficiency at its finest. You humans are at such a disadvantage. Remind me to add unfair biological advantages to my complaint log, Max quipped as he grabbed a pair of thermal gloves. Zildjian Tech stood off to the side, arms crossed, his gaze sharp as he watched Max and his daughter prepare to smelt the cryopod components. His skeptical expression hadn't changed much since the project began, but Max was starting to find it more amusing than intimidating. The first pieces of the cryopod's armored shell were fed into the smelter, glowing as they melted into a shimmering liquid alloy. Ava's holographic form flickered to life nearby, her humanoid projection watching the process with a clinical detachment. "The material density is impressive," Ava commented. "It will integrate well into the fabricator's resource bank. However, the next phase, constructing your shield drone, will test its structural limits." Zildjian grunted, his skepticism plain. "That shield-bearing drone design is over-engineered. Too heavy, too redundant. A waste of resources." Max didn't rise to the bait, keeping his focus on the smelting process. "It's robust for a reason. A shield drone isn't just a tool, it's a barrier. It has to withstand sustained impact, whether from energy weapons or physical strikes. Redundancy ensures it won't fail at the worst moment." Scythian chimed in, not missing a beat. "He's right. A drone like this is meant to take punishment. If you're worried, we can run a simulation. Let's see if the design can handle something really brutal." She grinned mischievously. "Like Cabo." Zildjian raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "A simulation of the captain? You'd be better off designing a tank. Or," Max said, his voice calm, "you could let the data speak for itself." With a grumble, Zildjian tapped a few commands into the console, initiating the simulation. On the nearby display, a digital rendering of the drone appeared, standing firm as a simulated Uthiaden, scaled to Cabo's size and strength, launched a relentless assault. The drone's shield absorbed blow after blow, its structural integrity holding at an impressive 93%. Ziphian shot her father a smug look. "Looks like it's not so over-engineered after all." Zildjian muttered something under his breath but didn't argue further. Max allowed himself a small smile, satisfied but not smug. He was learning to let his work speak for itself. Later that day, Max stood outside Cabo Zoam's office, datapad in hand. He took a steadying breath before the door slid open, revealing the captain seated behind his desk. The ursine figure looked up, his imposing presence filling the room. "Come in, Max," Cabo said, gesturing for him to take a seat. Max stepped inside, his posture straight, and handed over the datapad. "This is the progress report on the cryopod smelting and the shield drone prototype. The material has been successfully integrated into Ava's fabricator, and we've run simulations to test the drone's durability. Results show a 93% hold rate against a simulated Outhiaden of your specifications." Cabo's eyebrows lifted slightly, his expression unreadable as he scanned the report. "Impressive," he said after a moment, his deep voice rumbling. "You've made excellent progress." Max shifted in his seat, uncomfortable with the praise. "It's just a drone," he said, downplaying the effort. "Ziphian and Zildjian did most of the heavy lifting." Cabo set the datapad down and leaned forward, fixing Max with a steady gaze. "When an Outhiaden of my age gives a compliment, it is not done lightly, Max. You should learn to accept it." The sincerity in Cabo's tone caught Max off guard. He nodded slowly, feeling a mix of pride and humility. "Thank you, Captain." Cabo leaned back in his chair, a hint of a smile on his ursine face. "You've earned it. Now let's see if your shield drone is as effective in the field as it is in your simulations. Keep up the good work, Provisional Officer." As Max left the office, he couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. For the first time in what felt like ages, he wasn't just surviving. He was contributing, earning his place among the crew of the Horizon. The observation deck was one of Max's favorite places on the ISC, Horizon. Its wide, curved window offered an uninterrupted view of the stars, their light piercing through the vast emptiness of space. It was where he often came to think or escape. Tonight the stars seemed different, less like the cold, taunting sentinels they had been, and more like guides, promises and warnings, he thought, not silent judges to his colony ship's fate. As he leaned against the railing, gazing out into the infinite, he wondered why this change had come. Was it the crew's gradual acceptance of him, Malinar's empathy, helping him with his lingering grief, or perhaps Cabo's subtle yet significant shift in attitude toward him? He'd started to feel like he belonged here, not just as a survivor or a curiosity, but as part of something larger. Max closed his eyes, letting the faint hum of the ship soothe his thoughts. When he opened them again, his resolve had solidified. Trust wasn't something he gave freely, but Cabo was proving worthy of it. In turn, Max felt he had to be worthy of Cabo's growing trust, a pivotal exchange, one that might shape his place aboard the Horizon. Still, a nagging curiosity bubbled to the surface. Max realized he didn't actually know what the ship's mission was beyond the vague goal of exploration. For all he understood about the Horizon's technology and systems, its actual purpose remained a mystery. "Ava," he called, his voice cutting through the quiet of the room. The ship's AI materialized almost instantly, her holographic form flickering into existence beside him. She inclined her head politely. Yes, Max? I've been here for almost 3 months now, and I just realized I don't actually know what the Horizon is doing out here. Care to enlighten me? Ava's expression shifted to one of mild amusement. The Horizon is on a 6-month exploration mission to the edge of Interstellar Council space. This is the 8th such mission for both the ship and its crew. You were picked up in the 2nd week of this deployment. In approximately 2.5 weeks, we will dock at Akerturis Station for resupply and crew shore leave, which will last about a month. Max absorbed the information, nodding thoughtfully. And the Interstellar Council, do they know I'm here? Ava hesitated for a moment before responding. Due to our current distance from Central Council communication networks, no. However, I am cataloging all your public actions and interactions. This will serve as evidence of your peaceful nature should the Council require assurance. Max raised an eyebrow, a small smile tugging at his lips. Cataloging me, huh? Guess I'll just have to make sure the record is spotless. Don't want to give the Council the wrong idea. Ava returned his smile, her tone even. That would be wise. First impressions are critical in diplomatic matters, especially with a species as unique as yours. Max chuckled softly. You make me sound like a curiosity in a zoo, more like an unclassified discovery, Ava replied smoothly. One that has the potential to change the course of interstellar relations. No pressure. None at all, Max said dryly, shaking his head. The conversation took a more serious turn when Ava added, on another note, Captain Cabo has finalized the planetary exploration mission scheduled for next week. You will be participating as part of the science department's team. Max straightened, his curiosity piqued. I'm going down to the surface? Correct. As a provisional science officer, your role will involve environmental analysis, geological sampling, and assisting in any biological examinations deemed necessary. Max nodded slowly. Makes sense. Can you show me the planet? Ava raised a hand and the holographic interface shifted, projecting a detailed image of the planetoid they would soon explore. The surface was a patchwork of rocky terrain, icy plains, and jagged mountain ranges, with faint indications of atmosphere and liquid reservoirs. This is planetoid GX473, Ava explained. It is classified as a Class 4 terrestrial body, with an atmosphere similar to that of a high-altitude region on a standard garden world, breathable for limited durations but requiring auxiliary oxygen in most cases. Surface temperatures range from 15 to 40 degrees Celsius, with localized volcanic activity in certain regions. Early scans suggest potential for both microbial life and rare mineral deposits. Max studied the projection closely, his mind already racing with possibilities. Looks like a challenge, he said, half to himself. It will be, Ava confirmed. But based on your performance thus far, I believe you will rise to the occasion. Max glanced at her, surprised by the rare note of encouragement in her voice. Thanks, Ava. I'll do my best not to disappoint. As the hologram faded and the observation deck returned to its quiet state, Max turned back to the stars. The planetoid loomed in his mind, a new challenge, a new opportunity to prove himself, and maybe, just maybe, a step closer to finding where he truly belonged in this vast, uncharted galaxy. But first he had a drone to finish.